Hey guys, it's Connie here from Say With Simplicity. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to paint this sign as well as how to set up this design in Silhouette Studio. We'll be creating a template that we can cut from wood as well as using an SVG that can be found in my Etsy shop to make this cute door hanger sign. You'll find the supply list in the description box below, so let's get started. Okay, so this first photo here that I'm going to be showing you is the template on this 1/8 inch birch plywood that I used for this sign. And you can see that I just, laid it on there and then traced around it so that I could cut it out with my scroll saw from the plywood. Okay, for the first step in my little project here, I wanted to create a template for using with my scroll saw. And basically what I did was just cut it out on the silhouette from plain old copy paper, printer paper, and just drew around it with a pencil on my wood, and that gave me my outline for the board that I was going to be using. And so what I did to make that template is I just went here to my offset panel, and now I have my offset, and I can just grab that and move it out of the way and go to my design, and you see all those little extras in there. Right click, release compound path, just take the jar part and delete everything else, and now I can move it back on my mat. And I wanted to keep it small enough so that I could do it on the mat. And I can go to the send panel. I have my copy paper chosen, and I can click on send and cut it out. Okay, so here we are again, and my next step will be taking this over to my scroll saw to be cut out. So I actually didn't get a lot of the scroll saw part here. I had a not so good place to set my camera while I was doing this, and so I just kind of grabbed that little clip. But now I decided that I wanted to go ahead and paint my board. I did sand it off a little bit first, and what I have there on the plate is some of the Rust-Oleum milk paint finish in classic white. And I sometimes use like the Waverly chalk paint for doing this with, and I'm out of that, and I have not been able to find any locally. So I don't know if any of you have been frustrated by the fact that sometimes you're not able to find some of the supplies you want now. And this worked out. This was just a little bit that I had left in the bottom of a can, and there's a little bit of graininess in it, but later on I take it and I sand out some of those little, lumpy parts or gritty parts, and after the sign is dry, and it works out just fine. And it really didn't take much to cover this. This is just an old paintbrush that I had around. Sometimes I use foam brushes, but I'm really starting to like to use the reusable brushes more and more, and this one is just a really inexpensive one, and it kind of gives that sort of a little bit of, what do you want to call it, more rustic finish for some of my palette signs that I paint. But it actually worked really well in getting a pretty smooth finish on this sign. So then I'll go ahead and I'll paint all the edges of this, and it just worked out really nice. Okay, I cut my template out from my wood on my scroll saw. I painted the sign, and now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make the stencil vinyl for this. So I'm going to use my little template for my jar as my weeding lines. And the reason being is that it's going to be the exact size of my wood, and it's just going to make placement so much easier. So we're going to just center this up. And I'm going to be cutting this out of 631 vinyl. And you can see here when I go to the send panel, I have the matte vinyl checked. And I'm going to just take the force down slightly on that. Okay, so I sped up this video quite a bit. You might notice that I'm using a Cricut mat here. I do have a Cricut Explorer 1 that I like to use sometimes for certain crafts, but I do sometimes use the Cricut mats on the silhouette. I think they kind of retain their stickiness a little bit longer than the silhouette mats do. I've actually been getting quite a few of the Nikapa mats, purchasing them off of Amazon, and I can leave a link to those in the description box below. But once this is finished, I will be weeding my design and placing it on my sign. As I mentioned, this is Oracle 631, and I buy this from Expressions Vinyl. I get it in the roll, and you can see that this is weeding really easily. The default blade setting for matte vinyl is a 1, but I bumped it up to 2, and then I backed off the force just slightly. Depending on your machine and your blade condition and other factors, you may need a different setting, so it's always recommended that you do a test setting. I found that this is what works well for me with this type of vinyl, and you can see that even like these little bits are coming off easily without, you know, pulling up the middles from the mat or anything like that. So while having the speed turned up on this portion of the video, it still really is a easy weed vinyl. So now I'll be putting my transfer paper on here, and I'm just using some clear contact paper. I think this particular piece that I'm using here I've used a few times, and it's still pretty sticky, and you'll be able to see that a little bit more when I'm trying to remove the transfer paper after I get it on the sign here. But I just burnished that down with a little squeegee thing that I have there, and I kind of like to work on the mat because it just holds everything still. It's just a personal preference, I guess. So now I'm going to pull the back off, and this is actually kind of the easy part here. You can see it's just really stuck onto the contact paper well, and I didn't have any little pieces that I had to press back down or anything like that. So now I'm going to place this on my sign, and I actually had just a little bit of trouble getting this on here. I mean, you can see where it has to go really easily because I created that. Excuse my dog, I think he was kind of reacting to something that was in the street. But anyway, as I said, that I do get this kind of down there, and I ended up pulling it back up because the top wasn't quite as straight as I wanted it to be. And so the thing I kind of like about the 631 also is that it just really removes easily when you have to kind of reposition things here. And so now I think I have it on there pretty straight, and I'm just going to use my hands to press it down. And sorry about the little bit of camera shake there. Now this is sort of the tricky part, and I think this is one of the things that gives a lot of people trouble. You know, you get to transfer paper that sort of wants to fight against your vinyl. I mean, the 631 is great, and ultimately it sticks down to the sign really well, but you know, it isn't so sticky on there that some parts don't kind of pull up. And thankfully I don't have a lot of little tiny middles or anything, you know, so you can kind of see where I go back and just sort of press them down, and that works pretty well for me. If you kind of just bring it straight back over itself and pull it at an angle, a lot of times, you know, you have a lot less trouble than if you just try to pull it straight off. And sometimes you can just kind of, yeah, there I'm just burnishing it down with my nail a little bit. Because you got that little bitty skinny part there in that E, and that's what makes it hard. But yeah, I'm just kind of pressing it down towards the sign and then rolling it back with my fingers. And this is just at regular camera speed. I think, you know, this is coming off pretty easy here. Like I said, that even though I've used that piece of contact before, it really was sticking to the vinyl pretty well. And now I just like to kind of burnish around the edges, you know, especially around the edges of the letters and the places where the paint is going to go, because that's going to kind of help keep paint from going in underneath your stencil. And again, sorry about the camera shake. I was kind of trying to work upstairs, and I didn't have my regular tripod right there. Okay, so I had to start my video over, so you see that there was just a little spot painted already, but I'm just kind of going in here, and I'm going with really, really light strokes with a makeup sponge, just kind of dabbing up and down as I go. And then, you know, I kind of go back over some places. I mean, this is Waverly black chalk paint, and it dries really quickly, and so then once you get those light layers done, then you can kind of go back in and fill some places where you see the white showing through a little bit. And it's just all a matter of personal preference, how much you want some of that to show through. Actually did kind of on this left side here, ended up going in with a paintbrush after I got my sign done and just kind of touched it up a little bit. It wasn't like it bled or anything, it just wasn't as much paint as I liked to suit me. But it did turn out nice and crisp, as you'll see in a little bit. And I think I did this video at about, I don't know, 3 times or 4 times the speed of what I'd normally work at. Now I did get a teeny bit of black like along the edge, especially up at the top, and I actually think that it still looked really good because you know, I did a little bit of sanding off of the paint at the top, but I mean, it really wasn't anything that was detrimental to the project. But here again, I'm just going back over parts and filling in where I need to. I love the makeup sponges, and I mean, I just get these like from Walmart or something, and they work wonderful. Sometimes I use a stencil brush, but And I mean, sometimes you can rinse these makeup sponges out too and just reuse them again. That way you're not really throwing so much stuff in the trash all the time. And what I'm lifting my vinyl with is just it's really a dental tool. We don't use it for that, but I had it in my drawer and it works pretty good for pulling up vinyl, getting in underneath those little bits. And you can see how crisp these lines actually turned out. I was really happy with it when I got done. Alrighty, the last thing I did was to drill a couple of small holes in the top so that I could string some jute twine through. And you could use wire for this as well. I haven't decorated this any further yet, but maybe you have some hints and tips. Would you add a bow or anything to it? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please be sure to share it with your friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.